She sounds so scary. I'm sorry. I post all of the discussions on my YouTube page. If you're here on my live, hello. We are discussing our June book selection for the Morbidly Curious Book Club. There's suddenly a lot of people in my live and I don't know what to do about it. Hello, Pomoster. So we're discussing our book club selection, Ghosts of the Tsunami. What a book. Okay, let me do my housekeeping first. I got to get the housekeeping out of the way. Let's see. Number one is always boyfriend gaming, but he just stepped out, so I don't know if we are gonna have that issue because sometimes he'll start screaming and people think that I'm holding somebody hostage. That's not the case. You don't have to speak, of course. We're just here to hang out. You don't have to, even if you haven't read the book or if you have, it doesn't matter. We're just here to chat. If you have read it and if you want to speak, no worries if you don't. Of course, some people are going to have some differing opinions. Let's just have people have their moment. If you disagree, you can say you disagree and explain why, but let's not get into arguments. I don't know how to handle that. So I will just probably remove you from the live if things get out of hand. There's also a raising hand option on Zoom. I think it's down by reactions. Also, the air conditioning gets kind of loud. If you need me to speak up, I totally can. I do have my nice mic hooked up, but let me know if I get quiet. So if you'd like to speak, though, go ahead and select that emoji and we can go select people from there. And the rest is just follow me on Instagram and blah, 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 stuff like that. The Morbidly Curious Book Club does have an Instagram, and I try and post pictures kind of periodically through the month as we're reading whatever we are reading. And like I said, June was Ghosts of the Tsunami, and I was worried that this was not going to be morbidly curious enough, and boy, howdy, was I wrong. So this might be one of the first books that we have read where I got messages and comments of people saying that they really wish they could have participated this month, but it was a little too much for them. The topic was a little too dark, and I totally understand. I think in light of everything in the news right at the beginning of June, right when we started reading this, it was not the best book selection, but we didn't know at the time. We vote on these, so it's kind of hard to say, but I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I thought it was very well done. I really appreciated Perry's input and his journalism aspect in this book, and I feel like it really covered all the bases. And I think I went into this kind of hoping that it would be more so a discussion of the spirits and the ghosts of the tsunami, but I didn't really take into account all the legal ramifications, like all the stuff that the parents would have to go through, because I didn't even know about the school. If you watched the Unsolved Mysteries episode about the tsunami, it doesn't really go into detail at the school at all. It more goes into detail about the literal ghosts of the tsunami and how Japan handled suddenly seeing dead people on their doorstep. So this was definitely a better take, in my opinion. And I've actually was reading some articles, and a lot of people did not appreciate the Unsolved Mysteries episode, which is quite fascinating to me. They said that it wasn't, focusing on what was important. It was just kind of focusing on something interesting, but whatever, that's a topic for a different time. I would love to know, though, if anybody else feels the same way and if they really enjoyed the book. Go ahead and raise your hand if you would like to speak, or let me know in the comments of the live or comments here on Zoom. Did anybody also give this 5 stars or 10 out of 10 or whatever? What did you guys think? Yes, Lauren.
I really liked it. I also thought it would be a lot more about like ghosts and stuff, like the halfway point where we meet, I think his name was Kaneda, the priest, and it kind of tone shifts a little bit. And then, so I really liked that spiritual part of it. But I also was really fascinated by like the reality of the horrors of the tsunami itself. I thought that was really fascinating. So.
Yeah, this was definitely not an easy, this wasn't an easy read, period, but earthquakes absolutely terrify me. And I feel like I really appreciated people posting like the videos and whatnot on our book club's page, but it was almost like an exposure therapy. Like it was really scaring me watching all these. But yeah, do. I mean, parts, I know he went into it, but some part of me does wish there was just a little bit more on the spirits aspect of it, because it's just such a huge part of Japanese culture and kind of how they see spirits and how they treat spirits and the conversations that people are having with spirits. Or even, again, talking about the Unsolved Mysteries episode, they really go into detail about how many ghosts or spirits were actually going into taxis and taxi drivers going ahead and paying their fare so they could take those spirits wherever those spirits needed to go, which I thought was very fascinating and I don't think was explored in this book. But again, that was their journalistic aspect, and this was his. I do have a fear of submerged things. Yes, that is me. That is me, who is terrified of things like submerged in the water. It's called submechanophobia. So yeah, I don't love watching the videos on that, which is, so ridiculous to say. Nikki said, I definitely expected more on the ghost and spirit side of things, but it was still overall a very interesting read. Absolutely agree. Did anybody else love it? Anybody else just absolutely love it? Or did anybody else hate it? I've not read The Deep. Go ahead, Becky.
Sorry, I'm old and I still struggle with Zoom a little bit. I actually literally finished it like 5 minutes ago, and I really loved it. And I had also seen the Unsolved Mysteries episode, and I realized that I had started that episode and then never gone back to it. I don't know if I'll watch it or not. Part of me wondered if Richard not delving into the kind of cultural, I mean, this is a white man who wrote this book.
Right.
And so part of me wondered if, out of respect, he didn't dive into the cultural and spiritual type discussion as much. He didn't say that, of course, but part of me wondered if that was just him sort of realizing that wasn't his place, maybe. I don't know, but I live in Seattle, so when this happened, right, this was a big deal for the Pacific Northwest also, and I was like thinking back and had never, like, do not remember anything about the school or anything like that. So it was just really fascinating to hear about it, because I don't feel that was part of the narrative that was shared here in the States. And also just I'm a mom, so it was really kind of devastating too. So anyway, those are my initial thoughts, like I said, after literally finishing it like 5 minutes ago. I was like speed reading to be finished by 4 o'clock or whatever. So
yeah, we went fishing and I was sitting by the lake finishing it as well. Because I love waiting until the last minute, as I've discovered. I don't know what it is. I read like 15 books a month, but for some reason, the Morbidly Curious book picks, I just like wait until Sunday at 5 o'clock. I think also, that was a worry kind of going into this as well, where I was like, okay, white man writing about a different culture. Let's see how this goes. And that's always, worries, especially since this author has written pretty much only stuff. And I hearing that he was like I think a BBC correspondent or some type of newspaper correspondent, I was like, oh, okay. But then like learning that he knows the language and he's been there I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better about this, because I get really worried about stuff like that where I'm like, oh God, is this guy just gonna butcher this? And I just made, the whole book club read it. Great. I also think a big part of him not diving into the supernatural, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he said he didn't believe in it. And he was like, if people believe that, great. If that's their way of coping, or if that's their way of like interpreting their traumas, then go for it. If you're seeing, your ancestors and that's your way of dealing with it, awesome. That's of course not what I believe. That's probably not what most of the Morbidly Curious family believes, but I think out of respect, I think he handled that pretty well, instead of being kind of harsh about it. Like, no, well, this person's seeing ghosts again. I think it was handled very well. Somebody interestingly enough, put in the, or did anybody else, did anybody else want to put in their 2 cents on how they felt about the book?
I loved it. I don't like it. It was depressing to read. I think the constant description of the tsunamis like kind of kept me up at night thinking about this black mass like rapidly but yet slowly kind of moving towards you. And I also thought that he did a good job echoing the voices of survivors versus kind of just inserting himself. I know that was a big issue we had with, what was it, Hell in the Heartland?
Yeah.
Even though it's not necessarily, yeah. But I thought he did a really good job with that. Because I felt I was just listening to people talk about it versus, someone, I don't know, doing what's her name did. Her name Jax. Yeah.
So fun. I love that discussion. Yeah, that Richard definitely wasn't telling us about the mornings he was throwing up and getting, phone calls from people. So that was nice. It's always best to read books about some incident from a person, I guess, who went through it. He did, but it was kind of like, it wasn't like one of the mothers that wrote this book. So it's, we got to go in thinking like this isn't, but I think he did a very good job with it. So I definitely agree. Heather, I definitely agree with that. He showed just a lot of sympathy and he was able to voice the voiceless, I guess, if that's the best way to put it. And I wholeheartedly agree. Somebody in I don't know if they're here, but I don't remember the name, but somebody in the book club's website was kind of comparing this incident, which I know they're vastly different, but this incident to the school shooting that we saw in, remind me how to say that. Uvalde, is that how you say it, in Texas? And I definitely could see the comparisons where it's like, okay, where did we go wrong? How were these people failed? And this is a little bit different because it's a natural disaster and they had procedures in place. And it's really interesting too. I think I'm getting it jumbled up. I don't know if I saw this on a YouTube video, if I saw this on the Unsolved Mysteries document. I don't know if I read it, but somewhere somebody said, I'm pretty sure it was Richard Lloyd Prayer, but somebody said the best place to be in one of these situations is Japan. They're just very prepared for these types of things. And a 9.2 earthquake, some buildings were still completely upright because they are designed to sway, which holy hell, no way. Just nope, I can't. There are some buildings like that in Los Angeles when I lived there for a little while that would kind of sway. It's going to save you, but it's going to be like the worst 10 minutes of your life. Oh God. And then I think the worst in LA that I experienced was like a 7.4, and that was enough to make me want to leave. I could not fathom a 9.2, could not fathom a 9.2. But the safest place to be, I guess, is Japan. But it seemed like no matter how prepared they could be, this was still one of just the most devastating parts of Mother Nature that just was unavoidable. And people, I think it said somewhere that even the people who were trained for this, I try to be very careful with my tabbing this time, so I'm not just sitting here flipping through pages like, I don't remember what it said. Somebody whose job was part of like the disaster crew was up there risking their lives, saying, the one broadcasting that a tsunami was coming also perished, despite being, so prepared, so high up, and all of this. They also died along with like 42 of their coworkers. So no matter how prepared they were, this was going to be horrible. But as far as the school goes, why is there one teacher alive? Why are people lying? Why are they avoiding the topic? Where are all the kids? Why weren't they taken to safety? Question. And I'm really happy to hear that, of course, it's not going to bring the children back, but at least the courts saw that something horrible happened. How did you guys feel about them keeping the school kind of bones up as like a memorial? Were you kind of on the side of like, we should tear this down, or were you thinking like, oh, we should keep this? Go ahead, Lauren.
So I actually had a really hard time visualizing like how the town was set up. I know that there were maps, but the maps didn't have like topography.
Mhm.
So I had to like look up a lot of pictures of the school, and I saw that it had been like it was memorialized in like 2016. So there were a lot of pictures of it set up as a memorial. And I personally, I like this. I'm on the side of keep it as a memorial. I mean, of course, I didn't have people that were lost in that building, but I like the idea of physical pieces and locations and stuff as memory. Like, I'm not religious by any means. I'm very atheist, but something about like sentimental objects, sentimental places, a lot of that like Shintoism kind of ideology that is really present in Japan. I just think having that physical memory is there. And I like that they set up the tree. So if you didn't want to see it, you didn't have to.
That I
So.
really liked. Yeah, that was I think a good call. Very good call. Because we're hearing too, and I hate to keep comparing it to this, but we're hearing that they're going to tear down Robb Elementary. So I was curious as to what you guys thought. Hi, Leslie. You are muted. Don't forget to hit the unmute. There you go.
Okay. I completely agree. I struggled with a little bit because of all the people that lost all their children. I can imagine that's got to be, I can't imagine the feelings that go through that. But when he said they were going to put the trees around it, I haven't looked up any pictures of it, but I thought, okay, that will do it. That way people can have their memorial, but to the people that it bothers, there's trees around. And I just think I don't know. I think it's so respectful to leave it up and to not forget, like, 9/11, there's that beautiful memorial. Oklahoma City, I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the memorial there is just, I mean, it moves you to tears when you walk through it. So I think those are good things. I'm really glad that they decided to do it out of respect for both. So
Yeah.
they had, the trees surrounding it, but then the memorial was still up. But I think the culture, when we were talking about the culture a minute ago, he did some of it where in their culture, it sounded like they don't like to speak out or speak up about things to the authorities. And so I was very moved by the parents that just kept going and ended up going to court because they find the answers. What happened? We're not going to be quiet until we find out. And I guess that's not normally their culture.
Right. And some people, I think even when they went to court, I think was mentioned in the book that some people were kind of mortified that people were speaking out about this. Like, why are you talking about this? Why are you going to court? And I thought along with that, there were a lot of other interesting aspects in Japanese culture brought here to like a natural, like grief is kind of weird. Therapy really isn't a thing. And, suicide is seen as one thing compared to here. So it's really interesting how people reacted, I guess. Compared to like, what if this were to happen, over here? It's just, it's really interesting. I have a book on Oklahoma City.
Oh, good.
Over there. I've got a book on like that whole like span of like a couple of years, like, Ruby Ridge to Waco to Oklahoma City, like fascinates me.
Right.
Fascinates me. That is a rabbit hole and a half that I unfortunately dive down way too many times. Becky. You're good.
Again. I also tended toward liking that they left the school up, and I thought the trees was a good compromise, because I can understand the other side too. Besides the sort of sentimental reason or something to have that, I also just think unfortunately, sometimes around things like this, humanity's memory isn't very long, and it's important to keep memorials and have reminders of tragedies that happened so that they hopefully don't happen again.
Yeah.
And, that doesn't always work, right? In our country with school shootings and stuff, but I just think it's really important it's history, and it's important that it's remembered, because I found it so fascinating, the kind of the culture too of when they lose a child, like who's going to care for them in their old age, and then also who's going to sort of maintain the spiritual connection with the ancestors that have passed on. I felt that was really, I'm also very atheist, but I found that to be really just sort of devastating, right? Just what is stripping away, like it's so much more than just they lost a child. Yeah. Right. It's all the other sort of cultural and spiritual implications are really, really heavy. And so anyway, I think it's important to have reminders of that kind of thing, as terrible as it can be and as hurtful as it can be, to be reminded.
Yeah. And it gives people a place to go to if they need it, but it also is avoidable for those who don't want to do it.
Right.
Or don't want to see it. But it's also, I mean, I'm one of those people where, if something, it happens, it happens. Like it's just it's a part of what was and in history now, I guess. So you really should have a memorial up and tell people about, what happened here, so they remember. But again, same with me. Of course, I didn't lose anybody in this type of thing, in this type of natural disaster. So it's of course so easy for me to say that, but and what's interesting is I stitched my friend Caitlin's video. 2011, I was in high school still. For some reason, I just don't remember this happening. Like I'm sure I did at the time. Like I'm sure I saw it on the news, or my mom told me about it. But it's just so strange that like 10 years ago, I would have, like, when it comes to like 9/11, it's like, okay, I was really young. I don't remember that, but I'm sure at the time. But like this, I was older. I would have remembered seeing it. I don't remember it though. One thing, speaking of ancestors, I thought, of course, the horrific part of this was, 18,000 people lost their lives in this. But what was so devastating to me to read, the majority of the book, but what was so devastating was, again, the Japanese culture and how they respect their ancestors. And a lot of people lost their lives because they were going back into the homes to get family members and pictures, and they do cremations, and that's how they do funerals, I guess, in Japan, is they what the hell's the word for it? They cremate the bodies. So that's the best way I'm trying to say it. They have cremations, and even in the natural disaster, they couldn't, because the power went down and because of the nuclear power plant, and they didn't have enough space for 18,000 people. So not only were they not able to do proper funerals, but a lot of people lost their ancestors when their houses, were washed away, which was devastating to read about. I mean, I can't fathom like having this shrine in your home and losing it, because that is literally losing your ancestors, which was just absolutely heartbreaking to read about. And again, the whole thing was, but that for some reason, like especially after reading like Caitlin Dowdy's book that we read, I believe in February, where we just learned about how different cultures treat their dead, and this is one of those things where it's like it really got to me. But again, the whole book was devastating. I felt so, I think it was Radium Girls. I wasn't feeling well last month, but at the end of it, I was like apologizing. I was like, I really hope this fits into the morbidly curious theme. I apologize if it doesn't, or if it's not. It did. It definitely did. I see every time I need to start taking better notes. Where was that? I thought it was interesting that they didn't appreciate the Christian pastor coming in and like reading hymns. They said it was kind of annoying, and I was like, anyway.
They
Um,
called the white collar that he wears a dog collar, and that made me chuckle.
I didn't see that. I was like, dog collar? Was he saying like, what was he trying to say? You have to be very careful. Something about there's no God, there's no, where was that? I read it out loud. Oh. The Christian pastor, it was page 241. The Christian pastor was trying to sing hymns, but none of the hymns in his book seemed right. I couldn't even say the sutra. It came out in screams and shouts. The priests lurched uselessly through the rubble. Oh my God. In their rich robes, croaking the scriptures, getting in the way. And when we got to the sea, said Kanita, when we saw the sea, we couldn't face it. It was as if we couldn't interpret what we were seeing. We realized that for all that we had learned about religious ritual and language, none of it was effective in facing what we saw all around us. This destruction that we were living inside, it couldn't be framed by the principles and theories of religion. Even as priests, we were close to the fear that people express when they say, we see no God, we see no Buddha here. I realized then that religious language was an armor that we wore to protect ourselves, and that the only way forward was to take it off. I was like, yes. I'm very happy to hear that people enjoyed it though. Did anybody here like absolutely hate it, despise it, get it out of my face? I love the discussions when people absolutely hated it. I love it. I love it. But this was such a good book. I was expecting people to enjoy it.
I'll admit I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a really difficult read because I knew so much about it going from the from what was said on the news, because I do remember a lot of when this happened. Like I just remember like where I was working, when I was working when it happened, when we found out and everything like that. And it just having all of that information and then reading the book, it was so vastly different. So it was difficult. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely like a harder read for me because of that.
Yeah. I did. I mean, typically with these books, I kind of stretch them out through the whole month, but this one I definitely felt like I had to take breaks because I just felt like, also the beginning, I don't know too much about earthquakes and science and stuff like that. I do know that I hate them, but my brain can't. I pretty much everybody I saw, poor people, I was like telling them like, did you know that in 2011 I had no idea that powerful of enough of an earthquake could literally move Japan closer to America and shift the earth a little bit off of its axis. Like my brain, I was like, hold on. Wait a minute. You're telling me that this rock that we live on literally moved because of how powerful this was. And this wasn't even the most powerful. I think this is the fourth most powerful earthquake ever. The worst one was in Chile. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's like every, what was it, 50, 60 years. The 1896 Japan, there was an 8.5, 1933, 8.4, 1978, 7.4, and then 2011 was 9.0, 9.2. But I think the 9.2 was like the fourth most intense scale earthquake ever. Go ahead, Becky.
Yeah, I mean, didn't that kind of just make you feel like so small? Like,
yes,
we are so inconsequential. Like,
yes.
It's mind-boggling to think about that.
Yeah.
And I know about earthquakes from living here, right? And I was here in 2001 when we had our big Nisqually earthquake, which was really scary for someone who grew up in the Midwest. I mean, I knew about tornadoes, but I didn't ever experience an earthquake. So it was really
also hate those.
not fun. Yeah, I hate tornadoes too. And similar, I think it was Samantha said something about like, she remembers it because it was in the news, and same thing. I'm a little bit older, so I was you know, a grown up and working and everything when this happened in 2011. And like I said, there were lots of concerns for the Pacific Northwest about some of the aftermath that might happen. And I mean, I'm guessing this probably still occurs, but for a long time, I mean, we were getting things that were washing up on our shores from Japan, which was,
Oh man.
you know, really, it was just sort of a weird time. And then just everybody being so concerned about the nuclear
That
part
too,
of it. I feel like that kind of took over.
Mm-hmm.
That was at the forefront, at least here in the news, you know, rather than necessarily the death toll and everything like that. So yeah, I think in that section and how through the book they talk about, everyone talks about, you know, the next one when the big one's coming and blah blah blah, and that happens here too, like constantly. Like, okay, the Nisqually quake was like big, but that's nothing compared to what and I have to just kind of turn that kind of thing off. Like, I can't live in that sort of anticipatory frame of mind. Like, you can do everything you can to prepare, I think, like, you know, just like in the book, and it could literally not fucking matter, right? Like, if it's the big one, I'm gone anyway, so you know, like, just let it be quick, I guess. I don't know, but
right.
Anyway, yeah.
The first earthquake that I actually ever experienced was here in my hometown in North Carolina. It was the most random thing, but we're actually pretty close to a fault. And actually Tennessee most of the state of Tennessee is on like a huge fault line. I was looking up, of course, all the fault lines and where they were in the United States, and, you know, where not to be. But the first one, I was in a car and I thought I, you know, messed up my dad's car because I was driving my dad's Jeep, and I was driving and I stopped at a stoplight and it starts moving and I'm like, oh no, dad's gonna be pissed. No, it was an earthquake. And then I moved to Los Angeles, I think it was around 2017, and at my job, I'm with California natives. Like, I was like the weird one, the weird southerner that, you know, and the way they talk about earthquakes was just so casual. Like, well, the big one's coming, and I'm like, is that not scary? Like, are y'all okay? Like, does that not freak you out? Like, and almost everybody I knew had their cars packed with extra clothes, extra shoes. Sometimes their shoes were next to their bed, and they had, you know, jugs of water in their trunk. And they were like, oh, I always keep this just in case, you know, the world ends or something like that. Just the way they approached it was like, I don't know how y'all do it. I can't. No, and even the 7.4, I was, for some reason, every earthquake I experienced was in a car except for one where I was in my bedroom. And for some reason, the loudest part is the doorknob. So it always sounded like something was trying to break into my bedroom, but it was just an earthquake in the middle of the night. But it's always the cars. And even that enough, I was like, this is not for me. Yeah, I can't do it. But speaking of things washing on shore, I actually, after starting this book and reading it, I forgot that I did have A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki, which is just a phenomenal book if you guys have not read it. But it kind of goes over the idea of earthquakes, and the one on March 11th. But this woman who is in the Pacific Northwest, a Hello Kitty lunchbox kind of washes up on her little beach, and they think that it might have been from the earthquake. But inside the Hello Kitty lunchbox is this journal, and this girl who is a 16-year-old who unfortunately is kind of writing a journal because she plans to end her life. But her talking about Japanese culture is so fascinating, and how the Pacific Northwest people were talking about what they knew of the tsunami, and it was too early for stuff to be washing up on shore. So it was kind of a neat pairing. It is pretty long. I highly recommend the audiobook if you could do it, but it was neat to kind of read those together in tandem. But yeah, it's horrifying. And telling Ashes over here was saying this book made me think about my preparedness for hurricane season, which definitely is a thing in North Carolina. I totally understand that. But what's so scary about earthquakes is hurricanes, you have a little bit of time. Tornadoes, you have a little bit less time. I hate storms. Oh my God, I hate storms. I can't stress that enough. I turn into a child again. I do weekly reading vlogs on my Patreon, And 1 week there was a tornado warning here, and I was like vlogging in the bathroom, freaking out on the phone with like, my boyfriend's mother. And anyway, hate them. But with earthquakes, they just kind of happen. And what's so scary about that too is even the experts can't really like pin down when things are going to happen, or exactly, they know why, they know how, they potentially know where, but it's like they just happen. And I think that's the scariest thing. And it's interesting how Richard Lloyd Perry put this in the book, where he was talking about how people in Japan approach this earthquake, similar to how the people in California were talking about, like, oh, the big one's going to happen at some point, just that, oh God, it's so scary. Mother Nature. I try and get along with her, but man, terrifying. I think all in all, though, this was done very well. Yes, sorry, I'm just going on a tangent about how much I hate storms. Go ahead, Laura. Save me.
I wanted to say that that passage about how like every 20 years a massive earthquake happens in Japan or whatever, and that it could topple like all of Tokyo and take out like 600,000 people at once, freaked me out. But it also like it made me want to visit Tokyo while I still can, but it also made me never want to go to Japan.
That is very true. I've always wanted to go, and this shouldn't scare me to that point where I don't, but watch the second I land. Actually, there was actually a couple of videos on YouTube of people who were like at the airport right when it happened. And then I went down this rabbit hole of like the Weather Channel's, one of the Weather Channel's programs, where it was talking about like natural disasters. I was torturing myself this month with just videos. And it was talking about like caught on camera, like Mother Nature. And there was a guy with a dust storm, a tornado. But then there was a guy who was a student and went to Tokyo. And he was in Tokyo's highest point, like one of the it was like almost a needle tower type of situation, but then like halfway you could see like all of Tokyo up there right when the 9.2 hits. And I'm like, you know what, that would happen to me. As scared as I am of these things, that would happen to me. But again, that does kind of give me an incentive, like maybe we should go to Tokyo just to kind of see it, because yeah, something absolutely devastating could happen. And they joke about California cracking off the side of the United States too. So it's, go see these places while you can, I guess. I would love to see Tokyo though. I would love to see Japan at some point in my life. I really would. It's been about 40 minutes. Does anybody else didn't know much about the tsunamis for this event? The freakiest part to me is seeing the water get sucked back. Oh yeah. What's super scary though is like the people who are filming like the pier, and then the water kind of goes back and you can almost see like the mud. And then if you fast forward like 4 minutes in the video, he is up on the top of a mountain because it is all like flooded out. Like the water is just, and it's going so fast. And actually in that same caught on camera like Weather Channel thing that I was watching, there was something about horrible flooding in, I believe it was India, but she said that 6 inches of swiftly moving water is enough to knock you off your feet completely. Just 6 inches. The maximum height, which I can't fathom this, 131 feet. There was 15,854 confirmed dead, and at the time there was 2,500 people still missing. And even like I was saying, even higher ground wasn't enough. Like how prepared could you possibly be for something like that when literally there's 131 foot wall coming towards you, and again the black water and how scary that visual was. This was.
I was also going to say, also, I didn't realize this happened like in a winter time. So the hypothermia aspect of that, I was like, oh, fuck this. No. And then the descriptions of like the bruising, I don't know, there's just things about a tsunami as I just didn't think about. And so when they're describing people that had survived that are covered in bruises, or people who had died and they had found bodies being completely bruised up, and then them talking about surviving the first night soaking cold snow hitting the ground, I was like, I didn't even think about like other weather outside of water.
Yeah, and the surviving the tsunami was one part, and then surviving the night was the other part, because people who had escaped to high ground that have lost their homes suddenly were not only homeless but now freezing because it started snowing. We were watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode, and I said to him, because he was just the whole time, like, they're showing footage of just the tsunami coming in and his jaws just hanging open. I'm like, oh wait, it gets worse, it starts snowing. And he was like, you're full of shit. And I'm like,
Forgot
it
about
started
that. Yeah.
pouring snow, which is, again, Mother Nature, like, just how, like, yeah, the pressure. And I think they say that too about tornadoes too, I guess, just the pressure of the atmosphere, or however that works. Again, I'm not a scientist, I'm an idiot, but when it comes to like that movement and that, like, just, I mean, there's so much that could happen. And it literally started, I completely forgot about that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Heather. I completely forgot about it snowing.
I also like got stuck thinking about what the hell happens to marine life when like the tsunami comes. Like, that's, things are in the water. Like,
well, a lot of people are talking about the
do I
smell.
need to be concerned about? Yeah, and the smell. I didn't even think about a smell. I didn't think about like the color of like coming out of it, because you're coming out of water, but people are coming out like murky, like stained brown.
Just kill me.
Yeah.
I can't.
And then snow, because,
why not?
a tsunami isn't enough.
Yeah. And I in the Unsolved Mysteries documentary, they kind of start talking about the area, Tohoku, is that how you say it? About it being a huge farming area for nori. So you can imagine just that seaweed smell coming in too. But I think the smell was bad. But also when you watch a lot of these YouTube videos, it was so loud. Like the rushing water and then the houses just falling apart. I mean, it's
Yeah, because they talked about like a buckling and creaking and like rushing water, and then the sounds of things just like buildings collapsing. I don't know. The descriptions in this book were like really haunting.
Really haunting, and really, but I mean, really good. It was really captivating. And I remember him saying something about the mouth of he called it like the mouth of the tsunami or something like that. And I was like, oh God, I love it, but I hate it. Like, that was great, but oh, good. Go ahead, Becky.
You just reminded me of something, Heather, too. And you said haunting, and yes. And the whole time I'm a big baby, even though like I love this morbidly curious stuff. I hate horror movies, like hate them.
I love it.
But I did see The Ring many years ago, and I was like, please God, do not bring up The Ring. And then there was this moment where I think it almost sort of also kind of reminded me of like Stranger Things in the Upside Down, where this woman was getting visions of the ghosts and the spirits from the tsunami, and it was like a hellscape. Yeah. And then it was like very Ring-esque looking spirits, like in various, and I was just like, okay, I hope I can sleep tonight, because that was imagery that I didn't really need, but I thought it was really striking also. And yeah, I had forgotten about the weather part too, but it's like March, it's still winter. I mean, it's not even spring. Yeah. And yeah, I think it was maybe the story of the man who was in the building, and then the water came and took out like the bottom of the building, and then he got sucked out of the building and he lived in everything, but someone else he was with or something like had made it, but then died from exposure like overnight. And I just think that's so, I mean, that, like you said, that's just so heartbreaking to survive that and not drown and not get hit by rubble or whatever. And then to just, hypothermia really scares me. Like, that's a irrational fear of mine. To just suffer like that. Right. I think it's just so terrible, so horrific, and so terrible to imagine someone going through.
Seems so slow. You know what I mean? Yeah. Dragged out. And that was also in Unsolved Mysteries too, where a woman was at home and there was a knock on her door, and this person was just standing there soaked, even though it wasn't like raining or anything, because she was asking for a change of clothes. So the woman just brought her a change of clothes, and then that person went on their way, and she was like, I don't think that person actually existed. But yeah, very
Yeah, was that real or yeah.
um it's a valid fear though. Hypothermia is valid because it could kill you. But yeah, March is when we sometimes get really heavy snows. At least I did up in school. But yeah, that's still a time when that could happen. Yes, Lauren?
Sendai and Tohoku are like on the same, like, I would longitude, latitude, whatever, as like Pennsylvania. So that's the,
Oh. Is that where you are?
well, close. So, but yeah, so it stays really cold in the spring, like up until summer hits, and then it gets really hot. So
I have family up in Pittsburgh. That's what I was asking.
I'm
There
in
you
West Virginia.
We're neighbors, kind of. I'm glad though that the general consensus was good though. Nobody was screaming. We love to hear that. We have yet to have a book where people are like brawling, and I'm grateful. And I did put up the because I'm just so curious as to like what we're gonna keep reading. So I've already put up the poll. I already put up the poll for September and October books because I'm curious. So she's in Tokyo now. Bookshelf envy. My sister's in Sendai for a year. She's in Tokyo now. Was she there during the earthquake? Hi, library ensemble. How are you? How are you, dear? It's nice to see you. But I'm very excited for the next. We do have the next couple of books lined up. And again, yeah, there is a poll right now for the next, but it looks like it's already been chosen. There's already 2 books that like have the most votes, and I'm very excited to read both of them. But thank you guys so much for hanging out. Is there any other comments? Anything you loved about it? Anything you hated about it? Anything? Hello, puppy. Samantha, does your dog have anything to say?
No, he does not. He just says hi to everyone. That's all.
Hi, sweet thing. It's like, hey, mom, you've been.
Or am I done yet? That's what he's asking me.
Yeah, I need attention. Oh, afterwards. Yeah, of course. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. This has been a really interesting month, but I love the book, but I'm kind of glad it's over. Not gonna lie. But yeah, the next couple of books are up on the meetings tab. The general idea though is the last Sunday of every month is kind of when we will meet. And I've been doing it around the same time every month. I hope it's okay for people on the West Coast. It's now what, 5:00 over on the West Coast. Is this like a good time, do you think, or should I push it to like 8 when more people are probably out of work? I don't really know how exactly to do this, but it's been 7 or 8 o'clock. Just depends. I mean, yeah. Thank you.
I think it's really hard to manage a 3-hour time difference. So whatever works for you, people will make it work, right?
Yeah, I feel really bad too for the people who are like out of the country and like want to join this. It's like 2 a.m. for them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Next month, I believe, is Waiting for an Echo. We're going to be learning about America's prison system, which is probably just going to piss me off. It's going to be one of those months. Yeah. Waiting for an Echo. It looks like we're discussing that July 31st, the end of the month. Yep, that's Sunday. And then August, we're reading about the paranormal. So excited for that. Very excited for that. But yeah, go ahead and go vote if you haven't. It looks like it's down between a book about the Nixium cult and the Tell Me Everything book, which, spoiler alert, I have started and I'm loving. It's very good. Very good so far. I'm not paying attention. How does one join this book club? It's a perfect time for me. I'm so glad. It's the link in my bio. Just click on the join the Morbidly Curious book club. And then I think you just have to put in your email and you're like in. And if you would like to create your own book club, I'm actually an affiliate with the book club's website now. So if you guys would like to start your own book club, please use my link. It would help a lot. And I also love the book club's people. They're just good people. So I love supporting them. And plus it's free. I think other book clubs websites, like Meetup or something like that, is like $15 a month. Nobody wants to pay for that. I already pay for Zoom, so I adore book clubs. It's a really good site if you're looking to do something like that. But again, thank you guys so much for hanging out. I really appreciate this, and of course, this discussion will be up on my YouTube page. Yeah, go vote. I appreciate you all. Thank you guys for hanging out. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.